So as time progresses, right, and as the United States consolidates itself, and we're now talking about the first half of the 19th century, right? Manifest destiny is an idea that sort of permeates the American political psyche. This is the time of the movement west, where the United States is expanding its national borders, right? It's many of its proponents of this idea, like they feel that this is their right to do so, right? We sort of know this story. But what's fascinating is by mid-century, mid-19th century, the expansionist ambitions of the North American Republic smack right against the national ambitions of the Republic of Mexico. And I want to draw your attention to this map here, right? This is a map that dates just before the Mexican American War in the mid 19th century. And you notice, I mean, Mexico is already a large country by today's standards. But if you look at this map, Mexico at the time was a continent unto itself. It had its own revolutionary tradition and its own sort of history. And what we have here are two relatively young republics, both with ambitions to consolidate their political systems in the nation, and they come smack dab, they run against each other. And this is extremely important because this sets the stage for some of the cultural conflict that we witness today, right? I mean, you fast forward today, without wanting to get too presentist with this presentation, we're talking about border walls, and we're talking about there's an intense uh, atmosphere of racism that sort of permeates North American society these days, and so many of the tropes and so many of these things date directly back to this period when these two young republics come into conflict with each other, and you know the following a series of diplomatic uh, diplomatic snafus, really, between the United States and Mexico over Texas. The United States declares war on Mexico, and we have the beginning of the so-called Mexican American War, in which after a brief bloody period of fighting, the United States imposes the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo on Mexico on February 2nd, 1848. Now, remember, this is not a class on U.S.-Mexico relations. It's not even we could do an entire presentation on any one of these case studies, right? But I bring this particular one up because here we have the first time American expansionism, North American expansionism, impacting a Latin American republic. And it results in the continental United States looking the way it does today, and the largest portion of Mexican territory being ceded to the United States. Right. So this border region that is born out of this remains politically and socially tense for most of the history that we're going to talk about for the rest of today. And I would argue remains contentious today. And I think that this is important, particularly for our students, to understand how far back this story goes, and how memory, collective memory, plays a role in this. Because I would make the argument, right, that if we talk about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo today, on the street, 9 out of 10 North Americans probably not know what you're talking about. But I guarantee you that in Mexico they do. I guarantee you around Latin America, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo has never been forgotten, right? It is a mark of dishonor in the fact that, a Latin American republic lost most of its territory to foreign aggression. And that language may seem politically charged, but it's important to note that this is exactly what happened, and we have to acknowledge that if we're going to understand everything that comes afterwards. So this event, the Mexican American War, this sort of land grab, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo really solidifies U.S. policy in the region. The idea that for almost a half century, that North American expansionism is going to take precedent, even at the cost of war. And this begins a long period of U.S. intervention in Mexico that goes, well into the 20th century and includes U.S. intervention during the Mexican Revolution at the turn of the 20th century.